How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm melting.
Same, but we also are both wearing black.
We are
But
literally, I was kind of going through my whole wardrobe and I was like, what should I wear? And then I picked this out and I was like, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're going to sweat. But I'm good. I literally have the fan right here, so
you just
I've
woke
been
up
able to cool
today and
down.
chose violence.
Pardon?
Woke up today and chose violence. You wearing black.
Literally. Literally. But thank you so much for agreeing to do my live. So for everyone who's just tuned in, thanks so much. We were just doing the pleasantries while we wait. Today I have with me Sophie Shaw, which most of you will know on Instagram as @LawWithSophie. And we'll be talking about like her whole legal journey and how she is practicing now as a restructuring and insolvency lawyer. So thanks again, Sophie, for joining me. I don't know if you want to give everyone just a brief overview of your legal journey to date, and then we'll go into each thing in more detail after.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Overview of my legal journey. I'm going to try and keep it really brief and just canter through because it's long.
It's been a long one.
So I was that classic person who always got told when they were a kid, you should be a lawyer. When you grow up, you're definitely going to be a lawyer. Probably just because I was argumentative or something, I don't know. And so I always had it in the back of my mind. I figured, let's try this out and see. So I did law A-level, absolutely loved it. But, and I'm probably giving away my age here, I was applying for uni in the middle of the financial crisis. So
okay.
2008, when everything was hitting the proverbial fan in a massive way. So being like overly boring and cautious for a 17-year-old, I thought, let's be pragmatic here. Let's try and get work experience, make yourself really employable when you finish uni. So I was doing business studies A-level as well and really enjoying it, getting good grades and stuff. And I figured, I'll do a business degree. It was still going to stand me in really good stead. I was really into that kind of stuff, like really into finance and the markets. And I knew from research that it was just as valid a route to do the GDL. Off I went to do my business degree, and it was like the one that got away. You just can't stop thinking about them. I was just doing law modules throughout, like we did random little bits of law modules in my business degree.
Yeah.
And by the end of my final year, I was literally chomping at the bit, just desperate to crack on and do the GDL. So I did that, went off and did the GDL at BPP, and then figured I need to wait until I get a training contract to go and do the LPC. I had been paralegaling whilst I was on the GDL, scratching out an existence, and randomly, because I had a bit of work experience in a previous role on my undergraduate degree, I did a placement in marketing.
Okay.
So marketing combined with GDL, I just got loads of recruiters offering me legal marketing roles.
Right.
It was so random, but I figured it'd be great. I interviewed for one Linklaters, and I was like, this is going to be amazing for my CV regardless. It's a stopgap. What harm can it do?
Yeah, of course.
We all know it takes ages to get a training contract. I should have known that. So this stopgap role actually ended up being 3 years writing Linklaters, making my training contract applications, and eventually got there. I had a VAC scheme with my firm in 2016. Got my training contract off the back of that, finally. So I did that. I started training in 2019 after doing the LPC sponsored by my firm. And then finally not graduated,
qualified.
I already did that. Finally qualified in March this year. So as you said, I'm a Restructuring and Insolvency practitioner. At a lovely, lovely little Silver Circle firm, and that's like really brief canter through.
Nice. Like, it's true. It's like I've had a journey that's just as long, but I feel like during your journey you learn so much, you develop so much, and so when you do eventually get to that stage, you look back and you're like, it was all worth it anyways.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So good. Now we've had like a brief overview. I think that it would be good to kind of go into some things a bit more detail. So why don't we start with the fact that you did the GDL. So obviously I did an LLB, and I thought that in itself was intensive. And obviously I know that the GDL, they kind of cram everything into 1 year. How did you find that?
Oh, it was hard. It was really hard. And I made life really difficult on myself, I'm not going to lie. I just wish I had anything figures or anybody in the industry at that time to tell me I was taking too much on. I've like written about it on my blog before, and like the rationale for why I worked 3 days a week when I was on the GDL. But, you know, my dad is very much that kind of person who, you know, fair play to him, but he's just like, you have to pay your way. So I obviously did the GDL without a training contract, and he paid for my fees and was kind of supporting me a little bit. But he was like, look, you know, if you can pay your way, that'd be great as well. So I managed to find this part-time paralegal role. And so I didn't even give it a thought. Off I went and did it. I was like, amazing. It's going to help me get legal work experience and I'll get a really good amount of money. Like, nailed it. You didn't nail it. Because then I had Monday, Tuesday on GDL, Wednesday to Friday working. Wow. And then Sunday, I mean, obviously.
Burnt out. By that time, you're burnt out.
It was insane. So it was really hard and I made it difficult on myself. And that's why I always say to people now, if you take the thing is you think, I need to do all these things to get a training contract, I need to volunteer, I need to do this, I need to do that. You say yes to everything and you feel this huge pressure to get a training contract as soon as possible. But when you spread yourself as thinly as I did, you're not doing justice to any of those elements anyway. You're not going to get your training contract.
Absolutely.
I now look back at those applications and they were all pointless because I spent not enough time on research or energy and I was just like dead inside, basically making them. So yeah, it was really hard, and I just like tell everybody now. I really, really try and tell people on the GDL to focus on the course. It doesn't matter if you finish the GDL without a training contract. The only person that cares as much about that is you. It's such an intense year. You're learning so much, and the pace of it is insane. Yeah, so that has to be your focus, and that sounds so obvious. Some people are probably just like, no, obviously, but I just didn't appreciate that, and you know, it comes back to bite you. So it was tough, but also, you know, I think a lot of people that go and do the GDL are like me, where you have this real passion to go off and do it. So I did, you know, it's weird. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it because I made life for myself, but it was like I felt like I was finally on my way to doing what I wanted to do. Yeah. And, you know, I made some friends that have gone off and done different things and gone to different law firms and stuff that you're still in touch with, and it's kind of like that weird camaraderie of like, you know, you're all in it together. And it's a really intense year, but it's also bizarrely enjoyable at the same time, I thought anyway.
No, I completely agree with everything that you've just said. Like, even though I didn't do the GDL, I did the LLB. And before I went to law school, before I did my undergraduate, I had so many people tell me, oh, you need more than just good grades to be a lawyer. You need this, you need that. So when I got into my undergraduate, I went to University of Leicester. When I started my undergraduate degree, I took on everything. I did mooting, debating, public speaking. I worked 16 hours a week. I wore myself thin, and at the end of the day, the only thing that suffered was my grades. Yes. And I spent the next 4 years making up for the grades that I got because I took too much on. So I honestly could not agree more. I think it's so important to understand what you can handle and what you can't, and not to push it, and just focus on the there and the now, because you can't redo your academics. So if you feel like it's having an effect on your academics, let everything else go. Completely agree.
And it's so good at least that on the LLB, you then had a couple of years to redress the balance there. Because I think this is why I think people going through the GDL really need to know it's 9 months of your life.
And that's it, yeah.
Like, it's really as simple as that. And there's time to do everything else. And if you fit in a little bit here and there, I'm not saying, you know, if you do the GDL with a 9-to-5 job, you have got time. It's just that, you know, I obviously did it bizarrely. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And also, you know, when you're first year as well, you might have had a bit less of that kind of those role models and that experience and people guiding you to be like, I know you're keen and enthusiastic, but just because you're first year doesn't mean that you can throw yourself at everything and it's going to stick. Like, some things aren't going to stick.
Honestly, like, there was also that myth that went around that, oh, your first year grades don't go towards your degree classification, so like it's all good. But obviously, when you're a law first year, you need your first year grades to get vacation schemes and then to get training contracts. So it's like, I cannot understate how important it is to really just take things seriously and just do what you can. Yeah. So yeah, agreed. From GDL to LLB, completely agreed. So you did the GDL, and then even with the GDL, because obviously I know you mentioned that you kind of self-funded it. and I self-funded the LPC because I didn't have a training contract at that time. So I was working part-time trying to fund that. How did you go about looking into funding, or did you look into funding for the GDL, or did you just go straight to looking for a part-time job?
No, I'll be honest, I didn't. It was just something that I think I was just really fortunate that my dad was always a really big supporter of me going and doing law. And I'm sure he wishes I'd just done a law undergrad and he didn't have to do quite, put his hand in his pocket quite so much. I'm just really fortunate he had the means to cover the fees for me.
Okay.
I didn't look into any alternatives because I didn't really know what was out there. At that time, I heard a lot of horror stories about people that took personal loans out, and there were some scholarships floating around, but we're talking about 2013, 2014, when I think there's been a marked improvement in the focus on social mobility now.
Yeah, definitely.
But back then, the scholarships were few and far between, and it was kind of like polar ends of the spectrum. It was insane academic achievement, which is not me, or people from severely underrepresented backgrounds. But for people kind of somewhere in the middle, there weren't really funding options that weren't a loan. And I didn't want to get a loan because obviously I had student debt.
Yeah, we all have student debt.
Exactly. So I just didn't consider it. Well, it's not I didn't consider it, it's just that those are the two things that seem to be available. Yeah. And I think now the MA law is a good alternative because you can get postgraduate funding for that.
Absolutely.
But again, I think it's that lack of access to information and figures in the industry that can necessarily guide you in the right way. So I just went for it, and me and my dad just kind of did what we thought was best at the time. But yeah, I did draw the line at not self-funding the LPC, at least.
To be honest, I was only able to self-fund the LPC because I did, like you said, join it with a master's. So instead of paying 15,000, it cost me 5,000. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I can keep moving forward with 5,000. That's fine. Yeah. But no, I completely understand what you're saying. It's always better if you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. With the LPC as well, I think I quite liked the idea of being able to train with my future cohort. Or you're obviously not at a disadvantage necessarily if you don't. And I obviously know that like firms would have electives and stuff like that. So I just figured it didn't really matter anyway. I would just wait for that day if and when it came.
If and when it came, literally. I think for me also, by the time I got to the LPC stage, I probably had about 3 rounds of rejection. So I was like, if I don't just do the LPC, I'll probably just give up on law altogether. So I was like, at least if I put money into my education again.
But skin in the game, it's like, right, you've got to do it now.
Literally, I have to keep going now. Okay, great. So with the GDL done, how long did the journey take for you to get your training contract? And how is it that you kind of dealt with any rejections that you faced in the meantime?
Yeah. So I finished the GDL 2015.
Yeah.
And I was successful in the vacation scheme the year after that, the December 2016. But because obviously the way the years are structured, the recruitment cycles are structured, it was 3 years. Well, it was 4 years because I shot off some really rubbish applications when I was like just on the GDL, or I think the year I graduated, that kind of 2014 year I graduated.
Okay.
But by the time I eventually was successful in that vacation scheme on which I got my training contract, it was all in, I would say 3-4 years.
3, okay.
Reflection got easier as I went along because I think I got more resolute. And honestly, I'm not someone that is huge into like manifestation and stuff like that. But at that point in my life, without knowing it, that is what I was doing. I was not allowing myself to imagine a world where I didn't get a training contract. Like I was literally laser focused, and everything I was doing in life was preparing me for that. Like I literally had no life. Because I was working at Linklaters, I was fully embedded in the industry. I was in quite a demanding job, but any spare evenings I did have, I was like on lawcareers.net calendar looking for networking events.
Deadlines and everything.
I was just networking within the firm, learning as much as possible about the type of work that each practice area does, so that I was trying to suss out what was right for me in my legal career. And so the rejection just got easier as time went on. I think the thing is, you have to be so determined and motivated for this career. And I know how awful it feels when you get rejections, but I honestly just think it's a mindset thing. Now, obviously, I've broken in. It all seems like really trite advice, and it was the same for me when people say this sort of stuff to you. But it simply is numbers. There is not enough jobs for applicants. In fact, not only is there not enough, there's quite literally hundreds of thousands of a deficit. So rejection is built into the process. Even people that get a training contract on their first cycle will get rejections from some firms.
Yeah.
Nobody applies to firms and gets accepted on all of them. Well, nobody I've ever met. I think because it's such a unique, structured process, quite a lot of us need practice to write compelling applications. We know our motivations, but actually articulately describing them is one thing. And having really interesting, good experiences. A lot of like law grads are amazingly accomplished people, and everyone does the same stuff. Everybody does mooting, everybody does volunteering pro bono.
Yeah.
How you talk about it and how you deploy those skills that you gained that are going to make you stand out. Standing out in this game is just really hard. And so once you like know that and you kind of make it less personal and about you, that's how it really helped me. Rejection is rubbish, regardless of what it is. Rejection is just rubbish. But I felt a weird camaraderie because so many people are kind of in that same game. And it's a big reason why I started this platform as well, is to reassure people, because I think now, way more than when I was applying, socials and LinkedIn make you feel that you're the only one. Because people don't talk about the rejections, obviously. Well, they should. I don't know why, obviously, but it is obvious. We do. They just shout from the rooftops when they get their 55 vacation scheme offers. So I think that's why I think it's really important to talk about it and reduce that stigma, because it does get easier. The rejection gets easier, and you get better, and you finesse your approach and acquire interesting experiences and become a more rounded applicant.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. I think rejections get easier when you kind of have an understanding of where you're going wrong and what you need to do to move past and to the next stage, to the next time round. I think when you receive so much rejections at the beginning and like you're not quite sure what's wrong, you don't know what to do next or who to speak to, that's when it's daunting. That's when you start to question yourself. Whereas when you get to the stage where you're engaging with people who can offer you advice and you're seeking out different platforms that can kind of show you what to do and what not to do, you can have that conversation with yourself and be like, okay, this is something I didn't do this time around. Maybe if I try this again, then I'll be successful again. And that in itself motivates you, because you know what it is now you're focusing on when you send that next application or when you attend that next interview. So yeah, rejections are pants. Like I've cried endless tears, like cycle after cycle. Even last year, I received, no lie, 42 rejections before I got linklaters. 42 rejections.
But you've got an amazing training contract now.
Pardon?
The thing is, it only takes one. That's the thing.
It just takes one, honestly.
And it's the most annoying advice that people give you. But now I look back and I think I can't imagine it any other way, because I'm so happy where I trained and where I am now. And I really hope that you'll feel the same as well.
Yeah.
But things always do with job stuff. Things always work out for a reason. It has to be the right fit, and you have to have the right values. And
absolutely,
going to the right firm that feels like home is well worth the wait.
Absolutely, like it's like now that I'm like on my journey to start at Links, honestly, I'm in love, and it's so weird because for ages I never considered that I would make it to a Magic Circle firm or anything like that, and that wasn't even my goal because I just didn't think I'd fit in there. But like, when you finally got it and you put all the effort in and you've learned all the lessons along the way, your firm becomes your firm. So yeah, it's just a process that you go through, really.
Definitely. And you get that phone call and it's like
your heart stops.
That fades away. You really do forget it. Not forget, but the hurt and the rejections, it just falls away. Like when you get that offer, it really, the rest of it becomes inconsequential. It's just motivating yourself at the time to keep going despite the rejection. Whatever your driver is, you have to be really strong about your reasons for going into this line of work, because it's, for the vast majority of us, it's not easy.
Definitely. And another thing that you said about like everyone having the same like experiences, but not everyone knowing how to articulate it well. I think that's such a big point, and I think that's why I've like loved your profile and reached out at the beginning, because you weren't just giving tips, you were actually being like, okay, you have this question, this is how you answer this type of question. Like it was very, very tailored and intentional, and I thought those type of questions are such common questions that you can keep falling down at that hurdle if you don't know how to articulate all the experiences you have. So it's true. I think when it comes to Go on,
they don't have the tools and they don't have the language. And I'm not saying that, you know, sometimes I feel I don't want to put stuff out on my page and be like, this is how you should do it, because it's not like that. It's just, it's what I did and it's what worked for me. And I think then people can adapt it and they can think, oh, that's how specific you have to be. Okay. Because I think honestly, you know, when I look at my mentees' applications and things like that, they really think they're doing all this stuff and they're being really, really specific and they're like telling the story. And it's like, because I know you, I know 90% of you is not in that answer and it's so generic. But otherwise, you know, generic responses and you've got similar experiences and backgrounds to so many grads, it's not going to get you past that paper sift, and that is the biggest hurdle. I really think the vast majority of people I meet are hugely accomplished people, and if they get in the room, it's theirs, but it's getting past that paper sift.
No, definitely. So, with rejections out of the way and in the past, you got your training contract. What was that like? What were your seats and how did you find the different areas of law?
So my training contract was split into first seat real estate finance, second seat real estate, third seat corporate M&A, and fourth seat restructuring and insolvency, which is obviously where I carried on until I'm qualified. Not only is it a seat of two halves because of the pandemic, it was a seat of two halves because my first three seats were chosen for me. They weren't a preference. So it was a real like, oh, this is a bit rubbish at the time. But I learned so much from them still. And then obviously I went into my third seat. So I had 3 weeks in the office before we got the official work from home kind of mandate. And then we've been working from home ever since. So it's really been a training contract of two halves. My first seat was the biggest learning curve of my entire life, and I thought I was really well prepared because I was like, I've worked before,
I've got this.
jobs, like I'm grown up, I'm mature, like it's fine. I know how to record time and use DocuSign and like save my documents on iManage and all this kind of stuff. But nothing prepares you. Nothing prepares you because law in practice is wildly different to how you study it, even on the LPC. And that is why I'm kind of on a crusade to try and give people really practical tips and advice and insight into the day-to-day life of what it's like being a junior lawyer. And the thing is, it's actually, you know, quite unique being a trainee, because I think with a paralegal role, for example, people don't put the same level of expectation and pressure on you sometimes. The work might be really similar, but
the expectation is not as high. Yeah.
For a trainee, they're like, okay, you've got 6 months and we're here to really build you and shape you and give you a really good idea of what is involved in this line of work. And for most I was a trainee, I was like super keen. I'm like, the more you do, the more you learn. And I really have thrown myself into it as much as possible. So it really is a whirlwind, and levels of stress that I've never dealt with before. I've had days of insane stress, not in my current department and not when I was in, you know, the department as a trainee, but some of the seats I've done have been wild in terms of that. And I think that's your skill that you have to have your own coping mechanisms for. So yeah, I mean, the first seat was definitely the biggest, like,
which was real estate finance.
Real estate finance, yeah. And also I think it is partly because you're first seat and partly because it's a finance seat and it's mental. Chaos, but I've learned so much, and I still like. It's funny. I've actually been pulled into a couple of banking matters at the moment because my team's quite quiet, and it's just me and the partner, and I'm like, I did more on these deals as a trainee in RAF. Like the amount of responsibility we got in that department was insane. I learned so much. I'm so grateful for that experience because I feel like I could literally run a finance deal now, which is wild. But then my next seat was real estate, and it was so much more chilled. And I was just like, I arrived, so I got on really well with my supervisor in that seat. And like halfway through, we kind of were talking about it. And he's like, you arrive, and you're like out here. You're like, let's go, go, go. Why is everyone so relaxed? Like, I want to get this done. Let's get this done. And, you know, I had to really relax into it. And I also had to get used to every day being different. Because the thing with a finance seat is you negotiate the same sets of documents all the time. Some people love that. And, you know, the same points come up again and again on debentures, on loan agreements.
Yeah.
With real estate, the spectrum of work is so varied.
Yeah, definitely.
That it's a whole new skill set, and also you're on like 30, 40, 50, 60 matters as opposed to like one to one. So again, there was a whole new set of learning there. And then obviously the pandemic hit, and I was in my corporate seat, and my corporate seat was wildly different again. I mean, I hope I'm conveying the impression that I didn't realise how much each seat was going to be like a new job.
No, I was literally going to say that, like literally, because then each department has its own culture. Like there's a firm culture, and then it has like a department culture and a department way of doing things, and all different partners like things to be done a certain way. Yeah, I've heard all of it.
Exactly. Just when you think you've nailed something, you've actually just nailed the way that person likes it to be done. And then the next time you do it, you'll have a whole other set of comments. So yeah, corporate was crazy. I was on a couple of huge IPOs. At the time, the fact that I was wiped out and just doing these crazy hours was a bit of a godsend, because the pandemic, we were in lockdown. Like it's April, May, June, we didn't have anything to do except be at home. But I look back on it, I just am like, whoa, I just don't know how people do that as a life, like as a lifestyle choice. So that was, again, I learned a lot, but it was just like, you're like, when is this learning curve going to end? The thing is, you just keep going. And then, at some point, the bitter realization sets in. This is just life now. Every single day, you're developing and learning as a lawyer. And so I went to my foresight, knowing it was what I wanted to do. And the loveliest bunch of weirdos in this tiny little team that I already knew, and I had been like, I need this seat, I need this department, and I've been networking with them a lot, and I've been trying to do as much work adjacent to them as possible. Okay. So by the time I got to my 40, I was really hitting my stride. I feel like I'd cut my teeth. I feel like I was a strong trainee, and I was like, eyes on the prize, this is where I'm going to qualify. But the pandemic had other plans, because there was very little restructuring insolvency work on. So I basically did one or two really big high profile matters that like you would have seen in the news. I was like, this is cool. But then after the first month or two, the work just like died off. So it's just been a roller coaster is the best way I can describe it. And I had a catch up with the head of my team yesterday, and I'm coming up to whatever it is, like 4 months qualified now, and it's just gone like that. And again, the different iterations of you with month on month as a lawyer, it's constantly a learning curve. And he was like, it's been 4 months, like you've got 40 years, and you've got to keep
it's a long way to go.
Yeah. He's like, every check-in, every career conversation you have, you're going to keep feeling this, and you look back and just think, wow. So it was an amazing 2 years. I loved it. There was intensely busy times. There was really quiet times. There was people I loved working with. There was the odd one or two that I was like,
rather not, but
I mean, it'd be weird in a firm of thousands of people if you didn't find someone.
Of course, that's natural. Yeah.
But I absolutely loved it, and I in a weird way, I wish I could do it again, just with the benefit of knowing what you know. And I'm always really excited when people are about to start training. I'm just like, oh, you are in for a ride. Like, it's insane.
That's literally how I feel. I'm like, oh, what seat do I think I want to select? Like, what's it really going to be like in practice? I'm trying to speak to everyone in the departments that I think I want to put down and be like, okay, what does this really mean in practice?
That is smart. That's what you've got to do. And the people that don't do it don't get the seats they want.
No, 100%. Like, even when I had my interview, my training contract interview after the VAC scheme, and bless her, my interviewer was a senior associate in banking now, and now she's a partner in banking. She was like, make sure you come and sit in banking. I'm like, yeah, maybe.
Banking at Links, though. Whoa.
It would be intense. Honestly, banking, corporate M&A, like, I'm just looking at the hours of the day, like, it's going to get even longer,
Yeah, but I do think, I know it is geeky, and it's like, a bit like weird to say, but I honestly think that the kind of soundbite that the more you do, the more you learn is really valuable advice. And when you have quiet times, actually you mainly feel frustrated that you're not doing something or learning something.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure you'll have no shortage of those.
No shortage at all. Even as a paralegal, if I'm like not busy in one department, I do something in another department. Like, there's always something to do on some type of deal, so I'm not worried about that. So with your training contract, coming to an end, what is it that you liked most about restructuring insolvency law, and what were like your typical day-to-day tasks as a trainee and now as an associate?
Yeah. So what I loved about R&I is the type of person that is an R&I lawyer, and the type of work as well. So in general, the restructuring industry is made up of people that are super, super commercial and down to earth, and I think that fits like what I want to be. R&I lawyers are normally really down to earth and commercial, great with clients, but also super technical, because the thing about restructuring insolvency processes is there's so many different tools and there's so many different regimes and ways that companies can be restructured or insolvency processes they can be subject to. So you have to have really good technical knowledge, but there's a really interesting kind of tension there between everyone that works in R&I, from my experience, has been super, super commercial, but also just throwing boxes. And that's what I aspired to be, and that's why it kind of was a big draw for me. I mentioned that I did placements on my undergraduate, and one of them was in the restructuring team at an accountancy firm, and I loved it. And I loved meeting with industry participants. Insolvency practitioners are known to be very fun, very outgoing, very busy people, and they very much were. And I kind of, with that in mind, applied for restructuring insolvencies, my vacation scheme department, got it, sat with the team, they were lovely, and then I started training, and everybody knows, everybody wants to do R&I, everybody's like, they're the nicest team in the firm, like, it's just great, and it's a great seat to do for getting exposure to different types of work. So the thing with restructuring insolvency is, day-to-day doing advisory work, you'll be advising different departments of the firm, you'll be advising boards strategically on their duties if their company's about to be insolvent. You're also drawn into like deals, like transactional work, so you'll be doing refinancings, restructurings, corporate restructurings. But on the other side, you've got the formal insolvency processes like administrations and liquidations, so there's like the litigious side of it as well. All those different skill sets, it's always a huge part to see, and I think it's one of the best things you can do, because you're pulled in so many different directions and you learn so many different things. That is why that's what I held in mind, and that was born to be true when I was in the department. So for me, that's what makes me think this is a career I can do for the next 40 years, because it's so varied and there's so many different things that I can't see myself getting bored. And again, no shade to finance lawyers, but it's just because it's something I've got experience in. I couldn't imagine negotiating a debenture for 40 years. Like, I didn't want to do that. I don't want to be an expert in the same 8 documents. I want variety. And I also want variety of clients. I don't just want to act for, say, for example, financial institutions. My client base has been so varied since I was, started in the team as a trainee, now qualified.
Yeah, of course.
All different types of clients. I'm drafting all different types of documents. And for me, that's what I wanted. And to be honest, the work has been largely the same. I think obviously the main difference about stepping up and qualifying is you are more responsible for the decisions being made. So as a trainee, you've always got that net, everything's being checked. Yeah, I think this, I think that, is that right? As an associate, often it'll just be you and the partner, or if there is a trainee, you're supervising their work and making a judgment call whether it's right or wrong. But also you're a bit more of that main client contact. So instead of just doing what's in your comfort zone, you're having to think outside of the box and actually make sense and think, right, the partner's really busy, I'm going to try to make a judgment call, and strategically thinking, advising the client. That is the big step up, and that is the scary step up, I'm not going to lie. But in terms of like the day-to-day work, a lot of it is really similar. It's just, without being awful, delegating the bits that you might not want to do.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Everyone waits for that day. It's the day when you can start to offload some of that admin kind of stuff. And it's great, I'm not gonna lie. But the nuts and bolts is because we're a small team, everybody gets stuck in and does everything. So the nuts and bolts of what I do is pretty much the same day to day. It's just those subtle differences.
Okay, so it's like drafting documents. Do you liaise with clients?
Yeah. So I mean, I did as a trainee anyway, but I think now I'm very much so like the central client contact. We also advise a lot of office holders, so a lot of our clients are administrators, liquidators, stuff like that. So although they're a client, they're sort of actually running the insolvency process, so we liaise lots with them. It's a really drafting heavy department. You're always writing lots of different documents. It's also internally, you're dealing with a lot of things, because a lot of situations go wrong and people need restructuring insolvency advice, so it's a lot of liaising internally as well. So there's a real strong technical skill set there to be had, and I feel like there's an overwhelming amount of law to learn when it comes to restructuring insolvency. But there's that real softer side of things as well. There's softer skills and project management skills and and things like that come into it. So yeah, the day-to-day is lots of drafting, quite a lot of calls with clients, because it will be preliminary stages where they're like, oh, we think we're facing difficulties. Your classic all parties calls, with the other side when you're in the middle of a deal or a transaction. And also now a lot of my time is obviously spent supervising trainees, so working with the trainees and helping them and supporting them, which has been really nice as well.
Nice. So I know you mentioned, working within the firm with different teams. Is that teams like banking and like litigation, depending on the matter?
Yeah, so my firm is huge on real estate. So a lot of our work flows out of real estate. And because we have a huge landlord client base, often the landlords have got insolvent tenants and they need advice on that.
Okay.
But also a lot of times it'll be companies that are subject to insolvency procedures whose main asset is real estate. Lots of companies' main assets is property.
Yeah.
So we'll be liaising with
shop or an office or something.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll be liaising with them for real estate input. Oftentimes, when we're trying to restructure companies in a corporate capacity or a finance capacity, we might need tax input. Oftentimes, we will run deals in tandem with banking and corporate. So we're advising on the insolvency aspects, but then maybe running the financing or running the corporate piece. So it's working with those kind of departments. So oftentimes, we do need litigation input as well. So we have a real estate disputes team who will input too, and they might help us with some particularly tricky real estate related issues if we're in the middle of formal court proceedings. So those are the sort of teams we come up against. It can really vary by the deal, to be honest. I had something the other day with the derivatives team as well. So it's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah, derivatives. I was reading, like, I had a matter that involved derivatives, and I was reading also, and I was like, this is so technical. Like, it's just, it's a lot, honestly.
Yeah, I take my hat off to anyone that understands. I had something kind of, like I say, it was kind of tangential to it the other day. My supervisor was like, do you know what securitization is? And I was like,
give it a Google.
No, I can literally go on PLR now and look it up.
Yeah, literally, yeah. PLR, not Google, but yeah.
But yeah, it goes back to that point, every day's a school day, right?
No, definitely. It's constant learning. And I think when you're a trainee, they know that they're recruiting you to train you. So it's not a case that they expect you to know everything or understand everything. But they definitely expect you to go into the department with an attitude, willing to learn, willing to pick things up and willing to get stuck in. So yeah, I'm sure it's one of those tests to see, do you know? But if not, that's fine. We'll tell you anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, I love that you just said that, because I think the biggest thing, and probably the only thing people expect out of their trainees, is a great attitude. If you get something, you're enthusiastic and you can show that you're really passionate about the work, people love that and they will give you opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think even before you get to trainee stage, when you're applying and you're in the application stage and you're attending interviews and you get an interview question that you don't understand or you don't know the answer to, it's important to just give it a go, try your best, ask for their opinion or their input. Just don't give up, don't shut down, because they want someone who's going to be able to learn, who's going to be able to pick things up, who's going to just try. So yeah, as long as they can get that type of vibe from you, then they're fine. Like, they don't expect you to know the world. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a trainee, you'd be a lawyer already.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, everybody has that thing where they're like, I'm never this, like, it's so rare you're in a room of lawyers and you look around and you think, I'm the smartest person here. It's just not. But like, you can't be like, nailed it, learnt the law in this area. There's always more to know. So it's that humble pie as well. People really respect that, I think.
Sure. And like, I know you touched on the fact that, when the pandemic hit, your work kind of fell off a cliff. And I think we spoke about this briefly before, and I was really shocked by that, because obviously all you hear in the news is, this company's gone into administration, you got Top Shot, you got this, you got all these people, and you're like, well, shouldn't restructuring and insolvency lawyers be booming now? And you're like, no. Why is that?
It's really strange. I think this is why I'm also like, it's mad. I think, there's such a veneer between the outside and then what actually happens in so many ways. But this is one example. With R&I, there was a mental period when the pandemic first kicked off and everybody was falling over left, right and centre. That happened, that sort of time period was a couple of months. And then the government reacted really quickly, because obviously when it wants to, it can. And it took the opportunity
when it wants to.
Took the opportunity to push through some reforms of the restructuring insolvency regime that had been bills for ages, but they managed to push them through. and they introduced temporary measures. Those got introduced in June last year. As a result of those, it's so hard to bring insolvency processes against companies at the moment. So there's a lot of these companies are artificially suspended, basically, that aren't trading and that are loss making. And that otherwise, naturally, there's a level of insolvency activity that's happening every year that just isn't happening at the moment. Notwithstanding the pandemic, like the companies that are affected by the pandemic, rates are at the lowest since 1989. We just had the latest quarter statistics from the Insolvency Service. There's 656 less cases this quarter than last quarter. When I say it is dead, it's like cricket. It's dead. But when these measures stop getting extended, the government has introduced, it's going to blow up. But you're right, I think everybody thinks R&I lawyers are crazy busy at the moment. This is the calm before the storm. When it kicks off, it's going to be worse than the crisis, worse than any of us have ever seen. Not that I want companies to go insolvent, obviously, but I'm looking forward to being. It's like career making stuff. And some of those deals you mentioned, like my firm acted for one of the parties. We represented. We basically were acting for the party that bought one of the Arcadia brands. Okay. We've been involved in the airline collapses and restructuring. Yeah. There's been 8 restructuring plans. SEGO was introduced last June, and I think we've been involved in like 6 of them. It's career-making stuff, and nobody, you're joining Linklaters, nobody that works in the layman matter wants to be like, yeah, I was involved in that. You're not. It's a weird thing when you're an R&I lawyer. You don't want to be.
Yeah, you don't want to boast about you worked on a company collapsing, but
exactly, but it's still
big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, it depends what the outcome is. Like for us, when we acted for one of the purchases for the purchaser for one of the brands from Arcadia, that business was saved and has carried on trading as a completely new. It's got a new lease of life, so it's not always
yeah, it's not all bad.
Yeah,
that's good. So I think with you having gone into R&I and you've had some time to like settle in as like a qualified solicitor, looking back on your journey, and obviously we spoke about some things previously about focusing on your academics and not doing too much, but what other tips would you give generally to aspiring solicitors?
I think the GDL thing is massive. I think all my applications and efforts were wasted that year completely. I just should have really focused on my GDL and got good grades, to be honest, because I still feel insecure about some, like I did terrible in land law, and when I was in my real estate seat I really had to go back to it, and it's like, why make life difficult for yourself? So I really wish somebody would have just said, this isn't a normal level of activity, you're taking on way too much. I really wish that I would have had more confidence to network with individuals in the industry. I think a huge reason why I didn't succeed for years in getting a training contract is because I didn't have any connections. I could definitely have gone out of my way and gone to networking events, but it's weird. I'm a really sociable person, but I find it hard in those situations. A lack of confidence, imposter syndrome sets in. You look around and everybody's from affluent backgrounds and went to amazing universities, and they just fit in so much more naturally than you. And I just want to shake 22-year-old me and give her confidence and just be like, it's not, the more you do it, the less scary it gets. And having insider insight, I'm always banging on about it. People must be so bored of hearing it. Having insider insight is the thing that sets your applications apart. When you can really understand, past the veneer of what a firm says about itself, but what people actually experience when they're at that firm. And when you can understand the work that the firm does and why it is the way it is and its values and its ethos, that is what tips your applications to the next level. So I just really wish I'd known that sooner. And I also just wish there's just that wider confidence point, when you're facing so much rejection, I think it's really easy to let that self-doubt creep in.
Yeah,
think,
definitely.
All right, well, I'm 2, 3, 4 years into rejection, so this must be a sign. And when I was in the middle of that, I'd set myself a completely arbitrary deadline and was like, if I don't get a training contract by the time I'm 25, that's it.
I'm done. Yeah.
And it's just not true. It's really not true. I just really, really wish I could have given myself that confidence. And also, again, focused on the right things that were going to improve my applications. This stuff is all really easy to look at in hindsight. But, I feel like by the time I got to that fact, it was my first application of the recruitment season, the recruitment cycle. I got an interview. I got the back scheme. I'd really come along and finesse it. And unfortunately for me, it just took a bit of time and confidence and everything just coming together. I think that the biggest things I would tell people is you need to scale back when you're studying and focus on your studies.
Mm-hmm.
you need to embed yourself in the industry and network with people. No matter how cringy it is, it's got to be done. And it's easier than ever now because events are virtual, so you can fit it in your schedule.
And everyone's on their computers, so send them a LinkedIn message.
Everyone's on socials, doing things like this. The legal Instagram community, it's invaluable. It's a gold mine. The amount of times someone messages me and they're like, can you help me with this assessment centre? And I will say, just out of interest, what firm is it? And then you know someone from the legal industry at that firm, and they give them advice. They're successful. This is a community that everybody can and should be part of if they're an aspiring solicitor. And yeah, just that wider confidence point and backing yourself and really knowing that it's going to work out and just having faith in that and focus on the right things, your strengths as a candidate. I think it's really hard for most of us to big ourselves up in that way and to be self-aware enough to know what your strengths are. Now I'm really sure of those, but I think when you're facing all those rejections, you do just doubt it. But if you doubt it, everybody else is going to doubt it. You just have to...
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with everything you said. Like you said, really big on focusing on academics. Like my academics, I just can't, to be honest. Like I can't. Like academics is something you really can't do again. So yeah, for me, focusing on academics. If you can take on one extracurricular activity, do it. If you feel like it's too much, let it go. Like there's always the summer, there's always after, and yeah, you don't want to like stretch yourself and burn out too much. And as you said, like with networking and things like that, it's so important because, like I said, insider information is so much more valuable than looking on a firm's website that all of 2,000 people have access to when they're submitting the application form. Like it's just not the same. And I think for me, another major thing that I think really hindered me from getting a training contract for at least 2-3 of the years that I was unsuccessful was just not paying attention to the feedback that I received. Feedback is so important. Like I feel like right from first year of university, I kept hearing the commercial awareness word. And then I completely ignored it till literally last year. And that's why I keep banging on about certain platforms, because I'm like, this type of thing is what you need, because you're not going to get your foot in the door if they don't feel like you have any understanding about where law firms are in the market, what their clients are doing, why certain things matter. Like commercial awareness is something you really can't avoid.
That's so interesting. I feel like I was a total opposite candidate. I feel like that I was all right at. But I never even got. You obviously did way better than me. I never even got interviews. I spent 3 years not getting interviews. I had no feedback.
Oh no, so did I. My interviews only came the last 2 years.
But you're right. A lot of people, they hear the feedback, but they don't want to hear it and they don't accept it. And people know they need to be commercially aware, but they don't do anything to become commercially aware. So that's why. And I really love that. Like obviously having a business background, and because I was so embedded in the industry, and I just learned so much about how law firms work as a business. When you have to sell a law firm services, you just obviously
it's natural,
yeah. So that's why I try to let people know that it's not. I think it gets a really bad reputation, this whole concept of being commercially aware, but it's really not that involved.
It's really not. It's really not. And like, not an ambassador, this is not an ad, but I honestly think things like Watson's Daily make it really easy to just digest things on a daily basis. You can read it for half an hour a day and you're up to date. So I think that's important. And then lastly, for me, I think your network and your circle is important, because especially like if you're going through things like we did, where it's like 2-3 years worth of rejections, self-doubt is absolutely inevitable. Like it's going to happen. And to have people around you that encourage you, that kind of push you to keep going, that will like look at your application form and check for spelling errors, like that is the type of thing that will get you to where you need to be, because no man's an island, as they say.
So true. And you know what? I never did that as well. And I definitely think that hindered me. Somebody actually asked me the other day, did you ever get any of your applications looked over by people? I didn't.
None.
I felt embarrassed. I think I didn't want to be vulnerable.
Literally.
I didn't have, on the GDL, I could have asked my peers, but I didn't want to. And then when after that, I was always working. And I don't know who I would have asked, because I had no industry connections. And if I would have asked my friends, are they going to review like 20 applications a year for me? Like, I don't know. But, for the ones that really mattered and counted to me, like my favourite firms, I definitely should have got someone to have.
Absolutely.
But I just didn't. It's so stupid.
It's a confidence thing. It's like, you spend lots of time with it and you're like, if I give it to someone, they may judge me, they may not think my grammar's good, they may think this. And then it's like, you actually do yourself a disservice, because there's a couple of spelling errors that your friend could have picked up on, but now, because graduate recruitment has picked up on it, it's a no. And it's just like, oh.
Exactly, yeah. That's a really great point. I definitely agree.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we have any additional questions. I have one question. When should I apply for training contracts? Because I'm so confused.
Oh,
Just like a general question, I guess.
well, I guess it depends what stage you're at,
Yeah.
obviously. So, actually, I should caveat all this with the fact that when the SQE is introduced in September, it'll probably be quite
Very
different,
yeah.
because you don't, strictly speaking, have to have done the GDL or the LLB. I query that, and I think the general consensus, I always think the lawcareers.net SQE hub is like LCN is the
A1.
LCN say, realistically, you need legal knowledge to pass the SQE. So, for the most part, and it's not like the GDL and the LLB is carrying on. It's not like people are going to stop providing the GDL and LLB. So that the SQE, I think, is probably going to impact the timings of things. But in case anybody doesn't know, law firms recruit 2 years in advance. So if you're a non-law candidate like me, the earliest you can apply is the last year of your undergraduate, because then you've got 2 years to do the GDL and the LPC, or 2 years to do the SQE exams. And if you're a law student, the earliest you can apply is the second to last year. But firms might have their own policies. I always speak, whenever I say anything, it's couched in terms of large commercial firms. So depending on what you want to do, it might be different, because smaller firms have more flexible timings and hiring policies. So if you're interested,
absolutely, it definitely, like I said, it definitely depends on what stage you're at. It depends which route you're going to take. It depends on what type of law firms you're going for. So if you're going for more high street firms, so that's type of like work-life balance stuff you want, then you can apply the same year that you want it. I think it depends. I think we need a little bit more information to answer that completely. Okay, so we have another question. How would you prevent repeating yourself in applications when you have already applied to the firm? Great question.
So I think that it's not about the form, it's about the experiences you've gained. So if you've applied to, and I applied to my firm several times before I was successful in starting training there, you have to be getting different experiences and skills in the interim. If you're, the same candidate, then how can you make your form that much different? So it's about going out and cultivating interesting experiences in and out of the law. So develop interests outside of the law and skills and hobbies that you're passionate about, and also get as much work experience and industry insight into the law as you can. If your application isn't improved, then I don't think it's worth applying for the second or third or fourth time, because I think actually most firms have a cap on how many times you can apply anyway, because if you're not substantially improving your application, then obviously the outcome is going to be the same. In terms of actual specific advice on the form, I think that reflecting on previous forms, you will always find things you can improve anyway. And it's about having that really critical eye, like trying to exercise that self-awareness and being like, is this good enough? And I know it sounds really like, how do you know? But my yardstick, I always say, and it sounds really like brutal, and people are always just like, that's savage. But you have to think, if anybody else could write that sentence in your application form, it's too generic and it's not good enough. And I always think that's an amazing rule of thumb, if I do say so myself. You have to keep thinking, but why? But why? But why? Like, why is this relevant to you and to that opportunity at that firm? Why do they care? If anybody else can say it, they don't care, basically.
I think also, just to add to that, if that sentence could be copy and pasted to any other law firm, it's also too generic, because it doesn't actually show them that you as an individual really want to work for them as a specific law firm. If you can send that to their competitor especially, it's way too generic. So I think that's the first thing I would say. I think secondly, especially if you didn't get anyone to look at your application form the first time round, then get someone to do it before you write another one, and make sure that it wasn't spelling and grammar errors, because it could be the case that your content was good, but your spelling and grammar errors just gave them a bit too much shakes in terms of your attention to detail. So it could be that. And then, as you mentioned, you definitely want to look at what experiences you can gain from 1 year to the next, and then you can use those experiences to demonstrate the same skills, because more often than not, law firms don't change their questions every single year, maybe every couple of years. So if it's the same qualities they're looking for, then you want to change your experiences. And then I think, finally, if you did an application form for a law firm, in that year period, they would have done a lot more deals. They would have had a lot more information go out in the press, on their website. And so you want to make sure that any examples you're given about the law firm has changed.
Yeah.
So has the rankings changed? Has their commercial deals changed? Has their senior partners changed? Like, literally, you need to kind of show them that you've followed the journey, if it is still them you want to apply for. Yeah,
definitely. Agree with those.
Perfect. Next question. So someone who has achieved 2-2 due to ECC, not quite sure what that is, but would they have a hope in training contract? And what do you think about the SQE?
Yeah, I talk about this all the time. I get asked this constantly, and it always makes my heart bleed because I just think people really need to. This is a big kind of point that needs addressing.
Yeah,
the law firms are catching up with it, and the law firms are doing really good stuff to address this. Candidates need confidence, though, and candidates need to know what's what. So, first things first, many large commercial law firms have removed the minimum grade requirements. So there's no presupposition that a 2-2 is going to rule you out. Lots of law firms also do completely blind recruitment, so they don't even know what grades you've got. Lots of the large commercial law firms also use things like rare recruitment. I think it's about 45, 50 firms that use that. And what that does is it flags your grades in context. So if you only got a B in maths at GCSE, but generally everybody at your school got an E, then it says, this is a tall poppy, this is a high performer.
Yeah.
Or for your university, or if you had caring responsibilities, or if you worked so many hours a week, it gives you literally a context, and it tells the firm they don't meet your arbitrary criteria, but given context, they're a really high performer, and you should consider them. You said, I think the person that asked the question said ECC, which I think is extenuating circumstances.
Okay.
Using the extenuating circumstances box to really good effect. When you're explaining that, you want to take the emotion out of it and just say, this is what happened. This is why I didn't achieve the grades that I wanted to achieve. Here's what I did to address it.
Yeah.
And why it won't impact in the workplace when I'm a trainee.
Excellent. Last 2 points. It's so important. Like, the past is the past, but they want to know, okay, is the past going to repeat itself? So if it is you didn't get the grades because, you know, you had to work, not your fault, but you had to work because of family circumstances or whatever, you know, maybe now that you've learned how to manage your time better and balance responsibilities, like, what is it that you learned from that situation that means it won't happen again? Or, do you know what I mean? Like, I think those last 2 points are so important. Perfect. I think also what I would add is some law firms, I think, are quite difficult, I would say, when it comes to grades. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the reality of it. But I think, as you mentioned, a lot of law firms do stress the fact that they look at your whole application as a collective. And if that's the case, and those are the law firms that you should put more energy into, because then you can prop up your grades with your experience and with your commercial awareness and with your passion for the firm. Because I got a 2-2 in first and second year, and then I got 2 1s in first and final year, and then I got a distinction at law school. So I haven't had a consistently good academic history, as some law firms like to quote.
Me neither.
But if you make sure that you look out for the firms that are going to take things into consideration and look at things collectively, then don't let the law firms that won't discourage you.
Definitely. And I think, you know, the thing is, I don't know that many firms that are like that now. I think there's probably some super old school corporate firms, and maybe some of the American firms, I don't know, what I want to say, that are like, look, it's a way
minimum
to walk the down. At the end of the day, it's a hugely competitive process, and it's one really quick way that you can whittle applicants down. So I can appreciate why they do that. I don't agree with it, but I can see why they do it. But there's just as many firms that do amazing work in this space. And I think one good metric you can always tell when people look at applicants from all backgrounds and look at applicants in the round is when those firms really focus on diversity, social mobility, inclusivity in the profession. And there's lots of firms doing amazing work in that space. I did a post the other day about this, but the social mobility index has heaps of law firms in it. Those, if anybody on this live hasn't already looked at the social mobility index, those are going to be some amazing law firms that are going to prioritise more than just grades.
Nice. I've actually never heard of that, so that's a good point.
My firm's 4th in the index.
Perfect. Okay, I have 2 more questions. I think we'll do these 2 and then we'll probably wrap up. So the first question is, as a final year law student with no vacation scheme, would you recommend applying for a direct TC?
So first things first is just my personal opinion, because I am a VAC scheme fan.
Yeah.
I almost think it's not that. I think it's I think everybody should do a vacation scheme because it's a two-way street, and I know it doesn't feel like that, but you have to join the firm that's right for you. And I always wonder how people trot off and do a training contract at a firm when their interaction with it has been in an assessment centre, and that's it. I think vacation schemes are invaluable experience, and it's a really good time for you to also assess if the firm is right for you. So that's why I recommend doing that over a training contract in broad strokes. The other reason why I would recommend doing a vacation scheme is because this person is going to be, I'm assuming, if we take the average student, and it's not someone that's a mature student, 21 years old, the amount of experience you're going to have is probably going to be limited. So I think it's always going to help you to get more legal work experience. And at the end of the day, a VAC scheme is really good legal work experience. So that's the argument for doing a VAC scheme. I don't know this individual and I don't know their circumstances. What I do know is firms, by and large, if you're applying direct for a training contract, they need to see really clear commitment and motivation to the legal industry. And they're probably going to want some legal work experience because lots of people applying for direct training contracts will. It depends what that person's situation is. But the thing is, there's no harm, and lots of firms allow you to apply for both. So you can do training contract and vacation scheme at the same time. So there's no harm doing that. The main thing is they're at such an early stage anyway. So I think it's just about doing what's right for them. And if they would like to go and get more experience and figure out what area or what firms are right for them, then VAC schemes are always a really good thing to do.
Sure. No, I agree. Like I said, we both have got our training contracts via VAC scheme. So like we've both definitely seen the success that goes along with a VAC scheme. In my personal opinion, I don't feel like you need to do a VAC scheme to get a training contract, but I do agree that it is definitely harder to get a direct training contract because you're competing against more applicants, in my opinion, because you're competing against everyone who's finished law school, everyone who's in the process of doing law school, and they don't know you as a person. So all they're looking at as the piece of paper, whatever that you submitted, the online application form. So it can be quite hard to get direct TC. As you said, at least with a VAC scheme, you can assess them, they can assess you, you can show the qualities that you have, and then you can decide it's actually the right firm for you.
But even just on numbers, like if you think about when the recruitment year opens, say for example the firm has 20 spots for the year, they have their vacation scheme recruitment and they offer 12 vacation schemes. Then they've got 8 spots, and all the direct training contract applicants are fighting out for 8 spots, and there's thousands of them because, like you say, lots of people are eligible to apply at that stage.
Yeah.
So the odds are just lower and lower.
Absolutely.
So it's up to everyone what they're able to do and what they prefer to do. You know, obviously it did work for us, and another great point you made is you've got so much context and you've got so many examples to draw on, and the people that are interviewing you, you've got all this feedback on you from people whilst you've been there. Your chances of success in that final round for the vast majority of people are greater. So I think it's pretty cut and dry, but
yeah, especially if you haven't tried to apply for VAC schemes, I think maybe because we're getting to the end of the application process for direct, so it's normally like the 31st of July. In my personal opinion, I would advise not to rush an application in for next week. It's better for you to work on all the things you can work on and then start applying for winter vacation schemes in October. Yeah, I think
I agree with that. Getting there on opening day.
Yeah, because even like you said, with direct training contracts, the application process has been open since October. So as well as giving things away to VAC schemers, they would have started interviewing or screening out and putting people into piles from months ago. So even if there are spaces, even that direct training contract is getting smaller and smaller. So yeah, agreed. And then final question for tonight. Do you have any advice for career changers?
Well, I guess I count as a career changer. I think I actually kind of put a post out on this today. I think it's about recognising the value that you can bring, because where you've had your other role or several roles or whatever it might be, you are going to have such valuable skills to bring. Honestly, I'm constantly amazed at how few people that join law firms as a trainee, and it's completely understandable because a lot of them are law grads and they're 22 and they might not have had other full-time work. But I'm completely surprised at how many people haven't worked in offices before. don't know how to do some basic things, I've got so many advantages if you've worked in another field before. But identifying what your skills are and selling them really well. I think that in terms of advice, maybe so, because I don't want to make it sound like it's all positive. I think the only negative is, as a career changer or somebody from like a non-law background, there's just going to be extra scrutiny on that whole, why do you want to be law? Why do you want to go to this firm? Because you've pivoted, right? So you just need to be really clear on what your motivations are and to have a really good, compelling answer as to what that is. That would be my biggest piece of advice. You don't want to fall down on that. There's no excuse for not being really bang on with that one. That'd be my main excuse. But to be honest, I think the vast majority of people that are mature trainees or career changers tend to perform really well and do a really good job and take it a bit more in their stride, because you've got that extra life experience and kind of been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So
yeah,
I think that's it. You're in a really good position by and large.
Perfect. I think that is it. So thank you so much, Sophie, for joining us today, giving all your hints, tips, advice, overview. And thank you everyone for joining us. I think we both hope that you found it helpful.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to chat to you. And I hope it is helpful. If you get any follow-up questions, let me know, and you guys can feel free to DM me as well.
Yeah, let everyone know where they can find you, or remind them where they can find you.
And thanks for joining us on a night like tonight where it's really hot. It's
really hot.
I'm out in the garden with a rosé right now.
So what's your Instagram at? Sorry, just remind
my Instagram at. So it's at Law with Sophie.
Perfect. So yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, you can either message her or message me, and then we'll try and get back to you all. But other than that, have a good evening, everyone, and thanks again, Sophie. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Bye.